Often we hear how changing your diet and regular exercise have a positive impact on our overall health.
I think this is going to be, for me, one of the main takeaways, that it's a routine.
Yeah. Our muscle decline already at our late 20s, and if we want to prevent sarcopenia, especially in women, we need to start lifting weights. With strength training, I'm now in for quite a year, 1 year about, and I'm really happy how it turned out. So,
Doesn't it make such a big difference, strength training?
It makes a big difference because suddenly I'm even more in the misinformation jungle of social media. Everyone has an opinion, and of course only that particular opinion is the right one. Maybe I'm a bit too spoiled by Dr. Lane Norton, but she opens up a biochemistry book, reads one page, and then tells people the glucose spike is not okay. For me, scientific integrity and staying to the data that we have and being honest about it is something that I'm really I'm practicing that. Charlatans don't really care about your health. They just want to make money out of you and creating problems that are actually not there. Selling you the magic pill is actually how it works for them.
Mechanism. I think what's a little bit problematic is that a lot of the things she's suggesting, if you didn't train in nutrition, you might think that these were her concepts. But these are ideas that have been around for a very, very long time.
If you start using science to promote your own supplements and whatever. And
now she has this supplement, which I guess is just dried apple cider. Apple cider vinegar?
I don't know, it should lower the glucose spike. The truth is, finding reliable sources online is often very limiting. And in addition, doing the work and moving your body is not the sexy information that everyone wants. In my opinion, the nutrition and exercise field is struggling to provide good information. And today I want to talk with another scientist about the nutritional space from her perspective and in the context of obesity and diabetes, and how does the gut microbiome play a role in there. Have fun and enjoy our conversation.
Daily dose of honest science.
Hello guys, and welcome back to Daily Dose of Honest Science. I'm your host, Dr. Chani Kumar, and you are here at the best medical science podcast that you can hear on any podcast. And today I'm having a really amazing guest. She actually did her bachelor's at the McGill University in human nutrition. She is a master in science in nutrition and biomedicine from the Technical University of Munich. And she did her PhD in molecular nutrition medicine at TUM. Right now she is working as a postdoc, and her topics involved science behind nutrition and health science. And part-time, she's also a coach. So a big applause for Dr. Margherita Springer! Hi, Margherita.
Hi, happy to be here with you this afternoon.
We just had a chat how weird I am, actually. So, just we dive into it very quickly. So I call this section Why Studying Nutritional Science and Biomedical Sciences. I will have a two-parter here, and I want to give a little disclaimer in the beginning. So this conversation is really only on educational nature. The information in this video is not intended to or nor implied to be a substitution for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. All content, including text, graphics, images, and information contained in this video is for general information purposes only and does not replace a consultation with your own doctor and health professional. I think that's fair.
That's fair.
So, Margherita, it's so nice that you're joining.
Thanks for having me.
I think we should tell the people that we don't know each other like for quite a while, right? It's just
No.
very recently.
No, we met really recently through a program at the LMU, but we seem to hit it off and have a lot in common. So, yeah, we stayed in touch, and here I am.
Yes. I was fascinated when you were talking about your project, and I was like, oh my God, I just need to talk to that person. And likewise, you were the same. You said, oh my God, that's kind of cool. And I'm happy that we are vibing in that sense. It's sometimes a bit hard to find someone, right? So I'm really happy that you're here. So Margherita, can you tell me, why are you in science?
Well, this decision started a pretty long time ago. One of my favorite subjects in high school was exercise science. Always was really fascinated by physiology and anatomy. And a really small part of this course was nutritional science, and I was hooked from there. I was curious about the field, and whenever I could choose a study program for my bachelor's degree, that's the one that I picked, and haven't really looked back. It's been a pretty exciting career thus far.
When you say physiology and anatomy, for me it's like doctor, being a medical professional. So why not? Why not becoming a medical professional? Why?
Well, when I was younger, that was always one of my childhood dreams. I actually really wanted to be a dentist when I was a little was a little kid. But it's a really competitive study program, and in the end I ended up doing something else. But I've always been really interested in science. Also had considered a career in nursing at one point. So I like working. I like having contact with people. That's something I learned throughout my career, and I'm really curious about biology. Pretty much any aspect, I'm pretty fascinated.
Yeah, me too. As when I was a little kid, I was also like, I want to be a doctor. But then my audience already know the story. But I just quickly tell you, I didn't have the degree actually from my A levels to pursue it directly. So I wanted to do this practical course back then. I think half a year kind of nursing, and then I was like 2 months in, and someone died during that time, and that completely threw me off. Of course, the background that I had, like my parents were sick and my father was sick, and he was so sick that we feared that he might not make it. And then on top, having this kind of problem or experience just made me feel like I'm not made to be a medical doctor, even though I really like helping people. But I saw like, that's not the way for me to go, because I would take it too serious and too much on me if someone would die, and I'm thinking like all the time like what I could done differently. And science was the second part where I was really interested, like all the mechanisms and like what is the enzyme doing. So I was like, maybe that is more what I can do for the greater good of the society,
Yeah, I agree. I think that, it's a career that many aspire to, but it is a question also of your academic performance and, how you're performing during high school. But that desire to help people and that desire to also understand the why behind how things work, you can explore in a lot of different careers. And I don't think that's limited just to biology. I mean, engineering as well, robotics. I think there's definitely a lot of questions to answer there.
Artificial intelligence now, right? Yeah. So it's really amazing. And as you said, you were already hooked, especially by the nutritional and exercise field, I would say. I would like to know why specifically that field. The science is that big. For me, for instance, I just went into the more biochemistry, molecular biology. So what was the hooking moment you were like, oh, that's really amazing?
I think nowadays they call it me search instead of research. So you just get interested in the things that are affecting you on a daily basis. And, you know, we all have to eat and we should all be moving our bodies. Yeah. I had to focus more on nutrition and I would say exercise, but I'm also interested in other things. I'm also really interested in sleep research. I'm also quite interested also in happiness and how to be happy. Where is the scientific evidence behind you know, things that are proven to help people be happier? And that's, I think, you know, just because those topics affect me and I'm trying to optimize, I guess, a little bit. So I'm interested, of course, in like helping others. But I think, you know, how I think about research questions or how I get initially interested in things is I think about, okay, I'm putting something in my body. How does that like affect me, or you know, these types of questions?
Yeah, and this is also something that recently also caught my attention. More like I was always like trying to exercise and everything because I was like a little chubby bunny back then. And when I was 16, 17, around that time, I started to work out more because I was not that healthy anymore. And of course, it's a journey for me. It was up and down, up and down. Now I found a routine that I would say is good for me, including like cardio and strength training. So the combination of both actually helped me a lot.
And I love that word routine. And I think this is going to be for me one of the main takeaways, that it's a routine.
Yeah. This is also something that I had to learn. So I'm with strength training, I'm now in for quite a year, 1 year about. And I'm really happy how it turned out. So like,
doesn't it make such a big difference, strength training?
It makes a big difference because suddenly I'm even more, so my self-esteem and self-perception really like got skyrocketing.
That's great.
You know, like I was kind of strong, but I realized not that strong that you could lift weights. Like, and now I'm pretty good because I can lift now kind of stably 10 kg, which is for me like really good. I could, of course, improve more and more. But right now, with having all these kind of not problems, I mean, daily tasks in the lab, sometimes it's not feasible for me then to have the workout routine done. So I just stick to Saturday, Sundays for sure. That is my me time. So I call this my me time, even though I'm working out, because also my sleep got better. And sleep affects, again, quite your workout routine, right? So
yeah. Well, you know, there was recently this study that was comparing weekend warriors, so people that are working out a lot on the weekends versus individuals that are working out in small bouts throughout the week. Mm-hmm. No difference.
No difference.
No, they get the same benefits. Awesome. I was thinking, you know, whenever you're doing a lot of exercise all at once, maybe you're not as efficient or not working out as hard whenever you separate it. No. But in this case, they didn't find a difference between the two groups. So I think it's also, like, you know, just important to move and not to focus so much on, okay, when am I doing it?
Yes.
Am I doing it like at, you know, the right time of day and, you know, ultra optimizing? Yeah. Get moving.
Yes. So I think this kind of thinking of I should do it in the morning at this time in this pace, and that's kind of optimizing for like top tier athletes.
Yes.
And for a normalo, like the normal person, it's completely fine if you do it Saturday, Sunday. For me, I'm a more evening person. I don't like in the morning. And I think people should start listening more to their body rather than listening to someone who is like telling them you should do it like this and this and this. And it's the only routine that helps, I don't know, many people want to lose weight, right? So that's the main goal. And when I sometimes see my For You page for YouTube, and then I'm like, oh my God, all these kind of videos where they sell you like how to do it, how to lose belly fat and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, people just do it, And there are, of course, some people out there who are doing an amazing job explaining everything. But the problem is that some people don't realize that certain kind of information is only for that people that are already here, and you're starting here. So you need to kind of know where you're starting and what kind of information you need. So what are you doing as a workout?
A little bit. I think it really depends. So right now, I would say I'm doing a little bit more cardio than strength. But it just changed a little bit, but the ground rules, I would say, stay more or less the same. I'm trying to be active at least once a day. So by active, I mean that could be, a morning yoga session. That to me counts as active. Or it could also be joining a HIIT training in the evening. So I'm trying to make an effort that every day I am moving my body. If I achieve that every single day, no, but I would say most days time, I am moving once a day, and doing some physical activity.
Yeah, I recently started with that as well. So usually when I don't do it Saturdays, Sundays, or I do it there, but under the week I have the feeling I did too less. I started to do walks, right?
Yeah.
So, and my mom joined, so she is also going, and now my father joined. So we are all going always on an evening walk. So and always like at least 45 minutes, especially when it's so sunny outside. So you can really enjoy the sunset, actually.
Yeah, I think it's like a different way to enjoy me time and being outdoors. And you think, okay, a walk, it's kind of boring, but I think that you can make it fun. You can explore your neighborhood.
Yes.
You can, when you're looking around, you can also find different things that you like, some shops that you weren't aware of, or you can even listen to a podcast.
That I usually don't do. So when I want to do these kind of exercises, or for instance this time, I dedicate it to my parents, the time, or dedicate it to me. So like thoughts and kind of what I want to do further. Or if I didn't have time for certain thinking about a certain topic or something, that I take this time for me. That's why I also don't take my phone with me. So I completely, social media and everything is not there. And that's why I also don't post like, I went outside and I looked at this, and I'm not doing this. And for me, this is very important because I have the feeling if I don't do it, I get overloaded. Like we both were saying that we are like little, how's it called? Introverts, right? And then if you expose yourself too much, then at some point your battery is so drained that you need to recharge it, and the recharging only works if you're a bit alone for yourself.
Yes.
Right? Yes. So that I take, and I see a huge benefit doing it, especially now after being 1 year in, especially also having that integrated. I feel much better, and I was neglecting myself a lot, especially in doing my PhD, due to circumstances, but not realizing that I was in a vicious cycle. And now being out of this vicious cycle and seeing, oh my God, what did I do to my body, and how my body actually was still functioning, but my brain was not functioning anymore. I see like this connection between body and mind. And being more mindful what you do with your body is something that I really like teaching other people to take care of yourself. So how do you sometimes deal with this, that you have a lot to do in the lab, right? What is your routine to come down and have a bit more time for yourself?
When I notice that I'm starting to feel a bit more overwhelmed, I'm usually getting back into yoga. That helps me quite a bit. Also, focusing on my nighttime routine. So I have the app Headspace, and I love to listen to their stories, their nighttime stories. I have a particular one that I really like. So out of the whole, membership, I think if I just had a copy of this story, I would be satisfied. But I like listening to that story, and it helps me, chill out a little bit before bed. And my boyfriend also will listen with me. If he also feels like he needs to calm down a little bit, he will pick a different story, and we'll listen to that. And also, making sure that I'm getting 8 hours of sleep at least. So this week was a little bit more grueling, I would say. So I, was going home, shower, and then getting ready for bed.
Interesting. I had the same problem. But for me, it's more like because I sit there in the night times and try to, prepare the podcast or prepare some posts.
Oh, yeah.
No one is doing that for you.
Yeah.
And yesterday I was so angry because I updated my editor, so the editing software that I have, and I was not thinking that it would something affect. And then suddenly, because I still film at home, like I don't have a fancy studio where I could go and do that. So I have the curtains in my background, and I'm like, okay, that looks shit in the video. So I just wanted to cut out myself. So I'm in the front and the background is just gone. Suddenly that function is only available if you pay 109 euros per year.
Oh, goodness.
Before that, it was not. So I was pissed and I was like, no. So right now I'm thinking of how to do it. So I have to reshoot it, and I think I will buy now a green screen. So I can use like the chroma key in my editing software and be like, just remove the background. Thank you very much. And don't use this 109 euros. I could also do 11 euros monthly, but I don't want to. So I try to keep it as minimal as possible.
Yeah. No, I oddly enough, I have a very similar issue for the cycling classes I give.
Okay.
We have playlists that we, have for every single class, and I agreed to give a themed class. And it was created in a upgraded version of the software. And now to be able to open it, I have to pay 80 euros to update. I know.
Oh my God.
And it's these, but I think this is also a sign when these little things that are happening that become really frustrating, that, that's like for me also a sign that like I need to start to focus a little bit more on myself, and not getting as overwhelmed, and being a little bit careful about the things that I'm saying yes to, because I'm a very person that will say yes quite easily.
Me too. I'm also like, let's do it, and then I realize, oh fuck, I don't have time for that.
Yeah, and there's a podcast I really like called The Happiness Lab, and Dr. Laurie Santos is the host. She's a professor at Yale, and she recently had an episode about this where she's talking about how she agrees to a lot of things, and she ends up saying yes, damn. Like, yes, damn it, now I'm I'm doing this extra extra thing.
Yeah.
And what she also mentioned was, all the overhead costs that come with saying yes, So you have to also consider that the next time you're agreeing to something. So
Yeah.
also this podcast helps me like quite a bit. I listen to the Happiness Lab quite a bit.
It's her first time, so you're doing a really great job. Just quickly on podcasts, what kind
Yes.
of other podcasts are you listening to?
I listen to Speaking of Psychology from the American Psychological Association.
Wow.
I think they have very like high quality talks on motivation, stress management, how to write engaging stories, which helps me think about how I want to communicate science. The Happiness Lab. I also used to listen to Trained by Nike quite a bit. I really enjoyed their podcast, but they seem to have discontinued it. I haven't seen a new episode in quite some time, but they had really nice talks about sports, also about, they had a more holistic approach to fitness. You think Nike, you think like this big sports brand, but they also invited quite a few speakers to talk about sleep and recovery as well.
Interesting to know, because right now I'm not listening to a lot of podcasts, it's just very strictly to some of them. And of course, you will not get through by the podcast of, I guess, Professor Andrew Huberman, I guess. You know him, the neurobiologist.
Oh, we talked about this, but I didn't get to to check out his podcast.
Okay, so you can. I don't want to spoil it for you. So I know that Dr. Lane Norton is one of his guests now. So I don't know when this is going to be released. So I will have a look. He is having a PhD in nutritional science. So he is doing a great job in doing the educational stuff and latest research that he breaks it down if the study was good or bad.
Oh, I would love to see that then. Yeah.
If you watch, so you can watch him on YouTube. So just BioLane is his name.
BioLane.
BioLane.
Okay.
And I think he's doing an amazing job, but still he's kind of like, I think he has nearly 400,000 people as subscribers. And the way he does it is a bit more forefront, so he's really direct. So he's really like calling out the people. And
what?
Yes. So be aware that he is really like, and
like if he sees something in a paper that is
not okay, he will tell it. He will tell it. And then he also, there are many charlatans out there who are promoting it in the wrong way. So and he really calls them out. Be like, you don't know biochemistry. Don't know that. You don't know how this biochemical pathway works. Why you're lying and all these kind of stuff. So have a look. He's doing a great job. And recently I also started to watch Jeff Nippert. He's also actually more like a natural bodybuilder, but he studied also nutritional science. I think he only did a bachelor's, but his videos are like damn good. So he did one where he was explaining the science behind obesity, and he was reading like all the papers and explaining it so well. Because first I was like, I don't know if this guy would be the right person, but he did such a great job.
Oh, I would love to see it.
Yeah. So my recommendations on that topic.
Well, I'm always looking for, interesting content, and I'm, starting to run out of things to listen to because I also, while I'm cleaning or doing stuff around the house, I like to listen. So I definitely will check that out. Thank you.
So there are some German ones, but I think the English ones provide even more value, to be fair. Okay, so another thing that I wanted to ask you is, so since you're so in nutritional and exercise science, or the stuff that you learned, how easy or difficult is it actually to apply it in your daily life?
I think that's kind of a tough question because I don't even really think about it anymore. I think I just, for me, I think I really take it for granted. And I would say in general, I would say my diet is pretty healthy. Mm-hmm. What does that mean? To me, that means a lot of whole foods. So things that are fresh and as close to the natural form of the product as it can mm-hmm. get. I try to avoid processed foods, and I'm moving at least once a day. That is my goal. And for me now it's a routine. So I wouldn't say that I go out of my way to include healthy foods in my diet. It's just something I routinely do. And yeah, I mean, cooking is a big part of my life. Mm-hmm. And a lot of my time goes to that. And, on the flip side, going out for dinner or getting takeout and then bringing that home or buying, things at the grocery store that maybe aren't so healthy, those are just things that I don't do. It's not part of my normal routine. Actually, I live in the Max Vorstadt, so whenever I'm walking through the city, there's a lot of places to get takeout, but it's not really in my nature to say, okay, I'm tired, so I'm gonna get takeout. I'm prepared for those situations, so I know that I have stuff at home to cook, or I do some meal prepping. So I don't really ever fall into that situation. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But I think for many this is maybe not the case. But I take it for granted. But it's been some time that I've been, eating this way, and at some point it just becomes, natural.
Yes. For me, I've grown up in a household that was anyway doing all the time cooking at home. So I learned it from my father, especially the Indian cuisine. Mm-hmm. So for me, that's a no-brainer. So, but of course, we were also unhealthy at some point. So my father back then, before we were actually on, they had us, so my sister and me, he was working a lot. And one just ready-made pizza after the other. So that was kind of a bummer. And I guess this unhealthy living had its costs. That's why he's so sick, I would say. He's fine, so it's not of a big deal, but still I think, especially my mom, for instance, I asked her if it's fine to tell her story. So she was also not that healthy, and we try our best to cook all the time, but sometimes it's not possible, and then you just do like noodles and that's it. And now it's she retired, and she went to the doctor, and she does exercise for over a year, mainly cardio, but she wanted to get her health back. And just recently she got her blood work done, and she was really depressed because the marker for pre-diabetes was up. Yeah. So, and you hear on all the podcasts, what can you do? What kind of diet you should eat? And exercise is helping to actually limit the risk to get diabetes and all that. But in her case, it was still up. Not that a lot, so the doctor was actually really happy that it's not like crazily up. But still, she was a bit down, and I told her like it's not of a big deal, and she's now in such a program that she gets like the medication, and she's gonna be checked every 3 months. And I told her you have to keep on going. So it's really important that you stick to the routine, that you do it. and also the cholesterol levels were a bit up, but not that a lot, because the problem that we had is we don't have a before state. So she was not going to the doctor at all, and just recently realized that it would be good to go. And so we don't know like what was a year or 1.5 before. So that was kind of for her like, okay, something happened, which is good, but it's still not in the range where it should be. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's, I think that's really why there's a lot of frustration, right? Because, you know, you are making positive changes and then, you know, you get your blood work back and then maybe you're not seeing that. And my mom also had a really similar experience where, you know, you go to the doctor for a routine, you know, she went for a routine checkup and then, you know, you get the blood work back and you get kind of a like a negative surprise. Yeah. So you make some changes and it is a lot of effort, right? Yeah. You know, to make these changes and then, you know, to go back, you know, 6 months later and not see any big change, it can be really frustrating. And for my mom, it also feels like, you know, it's gonna be this way forever, right? That she's gonna have to take this medicine forever and she's, you know, going to have to like live this way forever. And this is why I think it's so important, you know, to find a routine that is fitting to your life and that is feeling good to you.
Yeah. And,
you know, as like, you know, when I mention that I studied nutrition, people are always asking. I mean, this is what's great about food, right? It's everyone eats, so you have a lot of common ground. There's always something to
completely.
Yeah, there's always something to talk about. And people ask me, like, what is the best diet for, like, what is the best diet I can eat, or what should I be eating? And I think that's a really tough question to answer because it depends, like, for what purpose, right? And in the context of obesity and diabetes, there was recently published a pretty like a good review where they had a look at all the different dietary interventions. So these different styles of
Mediterranean,
eating, so low carb,
yes,
Mediterranean style, and usually it's the diet that people can maintain and stick with that results in the most weight loss. So if a participant likes that diet and they can stick with that style of eating, they are likely to lose weight and keep that weight off. So it doesn't really matter if it is a low carb diet more in the direction of ketogenic or if it's a Mediterranean style diet. If you like that pattern of eating and you can keep doing that pattern of eating, you will lose weight.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, true. Just recently, I had also a talk with someone who's in the nutritional science, who's doing his PhD. And I was talking about with him a very restricted form of intermittent fasting, which is like only once a day you eat something. And then you have to get all your calories in and so on. And I was like, if that works for someone, do it, right? For this one guy who is, I think, practitioner. Yeah, who does this. He's doing it, I think, for like 10 years now. If it works for him, nice, fine. But might not work for me, for instance. So everyone has to somehow figure out what is working for them. And I think experimenting a bit is something that should everyone do. And there is not one fits for all kind of size thing. And this is somehow not communicated sometimes. And I think that's also why you get these questions, right? That people are like, Margherita, what should I do? I want to lose belly fat. And what should I eat? You know, like, and I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, it's really tricky. And I to be honest, I do shy away from this question. Yeah. And the reason why I don't like it, I don't like to sometimes tell people that I studied nutritional science is because food is such a sensitive topic and it's so personal, right?
Yeah.
And telling someone like, oh, you should be eating this, or this style of eating is like, recommended for this, it can be sometimes a little bit triggering to the other person. And this is where I think psychology can play a really big role in how to communicate this type of information, in a more sensitive way. And, you might tell someone like, okay, ketogenic could maybe be a good fit for you, like based on what you're telling me. But then they might say like, but I love this and I don't want to give this up. And then it becomes kind of like a you versus them.
Yeah.
Then for me, I just don't
You
really
stop, yeah.
Yeah, I don't really like that situation.
Yeah. So usually people want to hear like, yeah, what you're doing is fine. You don't need to do much. And I think when you come and be like, well, studies have been shown, you should do that, maybe do that, then they start to be like, oh my God, and I have
defensive.
Yeah. And then I think that's a huge problem. Like people are not so open-minded sometimes. And even scientists are not, right? So some of them swear on only that one thing, and others are very defensive and be like, no, my stuff is much more important, what I found, and I think that's the main problem.
It definitely is. I mean, I've studied nutrition and I've been in and out of like nutritional faculties for I don't know how many years, and there are definitely people that have their professors that have their point of view. And there was one professor that was, part of the faculty, and she swore by intermittent fasting, and it was known that, you should, if you bring her a coffee, do not put milk in it, So she like sworn by like intermittent fasting. And this is just something that she was known to do, and she thought this was the best way and was a big promoter of this pattern of eating. But I think for some people, this might not work. I mean, I do know that it works for some people, but for me personally, it just doesn't match my lifestyle. I'm moving a lot throughout the day. I like to have that energy from food in the morning, and I much rather, if I have to pick a meal to skip, I much rather skip dinner. Even though breakfast I think is a more socially acceptable meal to skip rather than dinner. I mean, it's a little bit odd to skip dinner.
Yeah, kind of.
So, but that's just my way of how I feel good in my body. So that's how I eat. Whereas for some people, they might have a schedule where, it's just not convenient to eat breakfast, and that in the morning they need to get up and go. So it might be more convenient for them to do intermittent fasting because it fits into their normal routine.
For me, I don't know if I would fall into that, but I skip lunch. I don't like to do it. Because when I do it, I get so drained and like I cannot move, and I'm like, I cannot work anymore. So breakfast, I usually do a good breakfast, and then when I come home after work, that's dinner, and that's it for me. And that works for me, right? So we are not promoting any kind of diet here.
But I really don't think there is like a holy grail diet. For me, the most convincing evidence that I've seen is, that sticking with a pattern of eating for a while will eventually, result in your, like in the context of obesity, weight loss. So I think it's more like the pattern and the routine, because, you're not every day going to have the discipline to say, maybe I'll get like I'll get takeout, or I will, have an extra, portion of food.
Yeah.
So that's why it has to be a routine. You have to really go out of your way to get it. And this is where I think like psychology can play a really big influence, like such as, just making sure that you don't have those things in your environment.
Yeah.
Or that it's not as easy for you to
make a barrier, like to overcome the barrier that you have to do it. That's for sure. Yeah, I completely agree. And I think it's also not that easy for many people to build up this barrier, right? So I think it takes a lot of energy to come to that conclusion that I need to change something. And very recently I saw a paper, it was actually a review talking about the different diets, and we will come to our second part with the gut microbiome.
Yes.
And I find it really interesting that each of the diets had somehow a different influence on the different bacteria that you have in your gut. And depending on which one is up or down regulated, which does not mean it's generally bad, right? So this should be out. It depends on what kind of metabolites are produced, and then helping you to actually, mitigate maybe diabetes or anything else in the body. And I find it so fascinating that what you eat, and of course the microbiome itself, including not only bacteria but also viruses and fungi, is so interesting to me, what they do actually, and help the body actually to produce these metabolites that we need. And other studies were also really interesting, how this gut-brain axis actually functions through that, and that I found so interesting. So for your research, what kind of research are you doing, and what is actually what you do in addition? Like, what is so interesting for you, maybe?
So my PhD thesis, I was investigating a group of people called the constitutionally thin. And I had initially heard about this project when I was a master's student. And at that time, I was a bit more focused on muscle physiology and aging studies, and on sarcopenia, which you mentioned in your intro. But somehow I always found that research a little bit sad, like because of this fact that you mentioned, like after, age 20, that you have a decline in muscle mass. And every intro on sarcopenia and muscle mass through aging always starts with this fact. And somehow I always find this really depressing. So I was like, okay, I kind of want to do something a little bit different. And I knew about this project within the company. So I approached the head of that team and asked them if they were looking for a PhD student. They were looking for people to investigate a gene set that they had gotten by investigating these people that are lean. So what constitutional thinness is these are people that have a very low body weight. And they usually go to doctors because they want to gain weight. They're eating, but they're just not gaining. Not gaining weight. And these people, like, even though they're, given extra food, they just tend to not put on body weight. And I was really fascinated by them. I thought, like, why
is this happening?
Why is this happening? And we all hear about people like this, that they, eat quite a bit, but are still not.
It's this notion of, oh, you can eat everything and don't put weight on. I'm just jealous, but we don't know why this is happening. And of course, these people have to take care of themselves because they could be in the underweight. And that's also not really good, right?
Yeah, and they face a lot of stigma because, they are very thin. So people, perceive them as anorexic or having some eating disorders, but these individuals, they are really looking to seek to gain weight, which is like, the opposite of an eating, in like direct contradiction of an eating disorder. Yeah. And so my boss at the time, he was working with this group of people and looking for interested researchers to try to figure out what is it about these people that, helps them to maintain a really low body weight. And for me, it was the first time I heard about an approach that was focusing on something a bit more positive, like what is happening in these people, like what is going right, rather than
what's going wrong,
what is going wrong, and that was, research I could really get behind. So they had collected fat tissue from these individuals, so in comparison to normal body weight individuals, and there was a pretty clear signature in their fat tissue that there were some differences there, and I happened to pick up a gene called SALT1A1.
Okay.
And this is really downregulated in the fat tissue of individuals that are lean. And then that's where my PhD project started out, like, trying to figure out what this gene is even doing in fat tissue, and why is it there, and how does it play a role in body weight regulation. So how we initially had started out was working with genetically modified mice that lack this gene, and it was really exciting at the time because they mirrored features of constitutional thinness. So the mice were also
thin.
They were also leaner. And what we had observed is that they also have more brown adipose tissue, and we were able to detect more UCP1 in their fat tissue as well. And so we think that this is the mechanism by which mice are able to, maintain a low body weight.
And could you somehow verify that by, I don't know, some human studies?
So there is data out on humans, and even though, we had the body weight that was different between the controls and also between the knockout mice, and we also saw this in the human beings, the mechanism by which this happens is different between humans and also in mice. So what we think is happening in humans is that there's futile cycling of lipids, meaning that lipids are being metabolized by fat cells, and then this is causing this futile cycling causes the body to lose energy through this cycle. That's why it's called a futile cycle. And in rodents, this happens through the uncoupling protein. And there's a loss of energy by heat. And so this is happening, we think, in two different ways, in humans versus mice. But nonetheless, we could see similarities between humans and also between the mice. And this data is now, out, and hopefully, it's under revision now and hopefully published pretty soon.
Is it the one that you told me, right?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so it's in revision now.
Cool.
And let's see.
Where did you put it now?
So now it's with Frontiers Endocrinology.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm looking forward to it.
I'm looking forward to it being published.
Finally. Wow, that's so cool. I always feel like I'm doing kind of not so interesting research when I hear all the cool stuff that other people are doing.
No, but I think that I don't think so. I think that you also develop a lot of and work with a lot of methods that we need to be able to use, and we need to make tools better. This is why even this review on the microbiome and diabetes, obesity, they acknowledge that this is a limitation, you know, having like better tech to be able to annotate and identify what bacteria is actually in the gut, because there's a lot of, you know, the technology was really limited before with 16S RNA. You know, you're looking just for a specific region, whereas, you know, sequencing the whole DNA can give you like a better idea of like which bacteria is in the gut, because, you know, there's a lot of shared sequences, and if you just think about the diversity in your microbiome. So,
and also microbiology is becoming a comeback by that, because when I was reading the paper, it was like microbiology will be a big part. And I know that people who are working in microbiology, they always publish really small, right? Because it's such a niche field. And I think right now they get like the attention that they deserve, maybe, who are studying that. So it's kind of interesting, because back then no one really cared a lot. And now it's coming back, I would say. Or what would you say?
I think it is really important, even if you think about like antibiotic resistance. I think it will become like a really important, a really important field. But it's not something that I, you know, like think about that much on a daily.
Me too, yeah.
On a daily basis.
No. Except I'm doing cloning.
Yeah.
Awesome. Then I use a specific strain to get my plasmid and everything. But it's nothing that I would say is in my mind when I think of the body in particular. So I know, of course, on the skin you have, and of course inside. But it's not like, does it influence me in that sense? And I think reading papers about it makes them more sensible about it. So, and I would love to know actually on the study that you have, because you did not look at the gut microbiome, right? In your case.
No. So specifically, I didn't look at the gut microbiome, and I can't recall if in the human study they checked
if they did it. Yeah.
What was performed was looking at the energy content of the feces. So to try to get an idea of, you know, are these individuals just, you know, less efficient at taking up
so the absorption is not good.
If the absorption is affected. In humans, it's not the case. In rodents, we didn't check.
Oh, okay.
But that was one criticism that I got, like that, you know, you didn't check if there's something different in the intestines or the absorption of, you know.
Okay. Might be a revision question.
Yeah,
hopefully not.
Let's see. Yeah.
Okay, very interesting. Because I would imagine that this might have also an impact, of course, on the fat tissue again, and also like what kind of enzymes were upregulated by this modification in the gene, right? So the gene itself is not transcribed so often. So there are like basal levels of it, or what is like, or is there any mutation in the gene that it makes not functional anymore, the protein?
So if there is mutations in SALT1A1 as a gene, that I'm not sure about.
Okay.
What I know about it is that some individuals express lower amounts of it, but the reason behind it, I'm not really sure. A mutation, I'm not. I don't want to say that there is a mutation, but we know that it's upregulated whenever there are substrates that would normally need to be sulfonated. So, for example, any kind of xenobiotic like paracetamol would usually be sulfonated, as well as some components of the diet. So things like polyphenols like resveratrol as well. And at the time when I was researching this gene, it was of interest because at the time I was working for a food company, and they knew that one of the substrates for this molecule was for sulfonation was resveratrol, and then this is why, you know, there was more interest in, you know, whenever you perform a differential gene expression experiment, you get a lot of different genes that pop out as statistically significant, and then you got to make a decision about which ones you want to investigate further. So of course a food company is going to look into a molecule that is involved in the metabolism of polyphenols. And so the idea behind this project is that, you know, because we see this reduction in sulfonation, we thought that maybe one mechanism is that these individuals eat more polyphenols, and then they're just not as efficient at metabolizing them, and that they're able to act to stay biologically active in the body. So this was also one idea that I was testing during my PhD. But looking at their diets, there wasn't anything in their diets that showed that they were eating a different and a different style. But we thought we could take advantage of inhibiting this protein to increase the bioavailability of other polyphenols that might have a beneficial effect on the body. So this was the more business side of the project. So one side was to look for natural inhibitors of this protein, and then you combine it with another molecule that has a benefit like resveratrol, and then you put this into a food product, and then this
magic happens. Yeah, okay, I get it.
I don't think magic happens, but I think you can write a food claim, and then
okay.
Then there's sales.
On the note on this, that I find very interesting. So you did your PhD in the academic setting, or did I get it
no,
wrong?
in industry. So I was most of the time I was in an industry lab, and I would say that 95% of the time I was in industry, and then 5% of the time I was doing research at an academic lab. So of course industry cannot give you a PhD, and you know, a university is the only place where you can get awarded a PhD. But we had a cooperation between this company and also Technical University of Munich. And then I was supervised by a professor there.
And that is really interesting for me. So I would like to dive shortly into this, because I only know the academic side. So I'm not into the industry side. So how different is it actually doing research in a more industrial setting rather than the academic setting?
I think time is a lot more important in industry, and you know, there was always like more time pressure and a lot more project management, I would say, and a lot more, you know, KPIs and all of these like project management words. And yeah, like you definitely feel time pressure a lot more, whereas in academia you don't feel this time pressure. Actually, time is in abundance, but money is not, and that's the opposite of industry, where when I was in industry I very rarely thought about the cost of things. Everything you need you can just buy, and that was pretty much it. You could also get to travel quite a bit. One thing I didn't really like about it was it sometimes felt quite closed, in that you can't really as openly share your results. There's a lot more confidentiality. Even for my PhD thesis, you know, it's like I have to inform the company if I publish something, and so like it is a lot more strict, I would say, but that also affects, you know, the development of your project and getting pretty like critical feedback. Whereas, you know, I can decide to go to a conference and I can present my results pretty freely and not have to worry too much about confidentiality. I mean, you worried maybe a little bit about getting scooped, but yeah. But for the most part, you don't feel that there's like a regulatory organization looking over what you're communicating.
Okay.
Which can hinder it a little bit. But now having been in both, I value both. And I think that there's a lot you can gain from industry and academic style research. If I were to now, you know, pick another job, would I pick another academic PhD? Another academic position as a postdoc? Probably not. I can say that with 90% certainty that I wouldn't. I liked the one I have and I like the one that I'm doing, but I would not do it
again.
I would not do a second
one. Yeah.
Second one. And if I would work in industry again, I'm not sure. I think I would like something a little bit in between for the next position. Something like a startup. Yeah. I think would be like an interesting experience for me.
I find it very interesting because you always hear these horror stories about industry just wants to make money, so you only work on this one project. You're not allowed if you see something cool besides that you can follow up. So I want to know, is it really like that? So in your case, like you found something really cool as a side note, were you be able to actually pursue that and be like, I want to discover that more? Or would be the company like, no, I gave you that topic, please stay on that. We don't want to spend money on the other one.
I think when times are good and you know that the company is doing really well, you're allowed to do what they call blue sky research. So, you know, the sky's the limit. You can do that. But whenever budget starts to get tight, and then you can feel a little bit more that you have to like stick to the plan. But in general, I think even when budget is tight, it's still not that tight. But I think there's a lot more focus on results. Like you have to deliver.
Okay. And did you ever encounter, doesn't have to be personally, but maybe from some colleague, what happens if this does not happen? If you cannot deliver, what happens then?
Like whole teams can get fired pretty quickly.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think if that management, at least where I worked, they didn't really believe in, okay, we just keep a team going. They are okay with sunk costs to like be able to invest the future expenses in another more promising product. So I would say it's a little bit more cutthroat.
Okay.
And it's really dynamic, right? So, and I think they have to be, you know, you're in business to, you know, every company has to have, you know, a vision. And I do think the company's vision is to make products. They're a company that still exists, is a company to make, you know, food that is, you know, good for people. It's a food company. So they wanted to create products with value for people. But, you know, to be able to do this, you need to also create products that people want. And you also need to be able to like deliver on that. So you have to pay close attention to, you know, what the market wants. And they started to release a lot of products that are vegan, that are plant-based. And when I started working there, initially it wasn't like that, but there was a pretty quick development that they were starting to release
So they were
healthier
realizing
foods.
like the demand is getting
Yeah.
more and more. So
Yeah,
we
yeah.
need to catch up on that. And
Yeah, I think it's like a double-sided coin. You have to like provide products that people actually want. So when people want to drink Nesquik, they want to drink,
yeah.
Nesquik, and they will keep buying it. But when people demand that, for example, Nesquik has some added benefits, like, maybe
Add some vitamin B.
yeah, or that
something,
it's
yeah.
like vegan, for example.
Okay.
Then they will adjust. But the customers have to. I think that customers can vote quite a bit with
Okay.
what they want to eat. But I think that like in my situation where I worked is quite unique. It was a spin out from a big food company, and this spin out was meant to increase the scientific reputation of this
Okay.
of this food company. And they hired mainly academics to work there, and a lot of them did postdocs, and it wasn't that many, I would say, people with a classical business training that had like MBAs from fancy business schools. It really was scientists. But I think in the end this caused quite a big clash with business, because I think scientists want to do really thorough research. They want to understand why, and they don't want to just mix vitamin D into Nesquik
Yes.
or other food components like a single amino acid into a Nesquik just to be able to put a food claim on it. And I think that sometimes there was a little bit of clash between science and business. But I think this is really an issue that is more limited to where I was working, and a cultural thing. So I don't know necessarily if an industry in another company it would be
Similar
different or
different,
not.
Makes me wonder, because I'm also like thinking of leaving academia, of course. There are several reasons. I don't want to go into it. And I was thinking, like, what should I take care of? Like, everything that I enjoy, the freedom and so on, do I have to give up? Do I have to be, like, on the money side and be, like, very strict? How much can we spend? So I was really interested to know, like, what kind of side you had. Of course, not every company is like that and working. So I'm pretty happy that you shared your experience, because it helped me a bit to understand that not every company is like that. So I need to find the correct company for myself then.
I think so, and I think it depends a lot on the management as well. But I think at the end of the day, no matter, I also was, I've been interviewing also for different scientific positions, and, they are in the business of making good products. And of course they want to make money. They have a lot of sunk costs, like whenever you develop a new product, there's a lot of R&D that goes into it, and not every product is successful. So I don't know. I don't think necessarily it's a bad thing to want to keep your company running. So
no, it's just another business model, right?
Yeah.
So academia is kind of a business model, a bad business model, and of course industry is optimized, right? So if something does not work, we need to get rid of. Otherwise, we lose a lot of money, right?
What do you think of papers that come out of industry and are published? Are you skeptical whenever you see that there's authors that are from, for example, like a pharmaceutical company or?
In the beginning, I was very skeptical. I was like, oh my God, they just want to make money out of that. But I recently actually did a post about a paper that was how you can detect in your blood the age of your organ. And that was actually...
Oh, wow.
Yes, it was super interesting, a proteomics study. And that was including companies as well. And because they were using a specific assay to do the blood work actually for the mass spec. And that one is, of course, very, very expensive. But I really liked how they did it and how they communicated it. And of course, a lot of research has to be done to fully understand. But this was for me like a groundbreaking collaboration. And I see it in our institute, actually, that it's getting more and more that industry kind of goes in and wants to collaborate with academia, so that you get much more out of it from the scientific side, but also from the, let's say, business side, or what you can develop. And I changed my mind, because I'm also right now trying to get companies more in, so we can actually develop together new methods, for instance.
I think so. I mean, for me, what I notice is in universities, there's a lot of knowledge there. And then companies have a lot of capital. They have a lot of equipment. And I think whenever you put the two together, you can really accelerate research.
Completely.
And I think that it's a shame that sometimes it's seen as, separate. But that's why I want this startup experience, because I really feel like you're right in between. And usually it's people that are coming out of an academic lab. They're getting their first funding or big round of funding together. And, so you have capital and you have knowledge. So I don't know. I think it could be a really interesting experience. That's why I want to go there next.
Yeah. No, and I totally support you. And I'm really looking forward to hear from you, like, how is it going? But I really changed my perspective on this, because, as you said, there's huge potential that we are not taking. And I think also from pharma companies, we always say, oh, big, bad pharma just wants to make more drugs. Right now, I'm actually working on a project that is kind of like drug discovery type. And understanding what is going on there helps actually to make better drugs, right? So I don't think we will come to a point where we never will ever have not a use for drugs anymore. I guess it's not possible. And I think if we would join forces, it would actually lead to a much better outcome. So,
but I think it's already happening more and more. I see postdocs in industry, and these positions are becoming more available. I think when I first started my PhD, this was something a little bit more rare, I would say, but I think it's going to become more common.
I see that too. So I think it's going to be changing also the landscape, maybe, that academia might need to wake up a bit and try to reach out the hands of industry to make more meaningful research, maybe. Because I think if you stay in your bubbles, and unfortunately I have the feeling academia is still very protective of that, groundbreaking new technologies or groundbreaking new stuff will not happen from academia, to be honest, because the money is so short. And also the way they treat, especially in Germany, their people, it's not the future, I have to say. I don't know how you feel about it, but
I think when I started my postdoc, I thought a lot about how postdocs are treated, and I knew I was going to get treated one way, and so I just approached it with, like, you treat me, you treat me this way, I'm going to treat you equally. So I want to get as much out of this experience in the next 3 years, just as you're trying to get the most out of me in 3 years. And it's temporary. I know it's not going to last forever. And I always treated it that way. So I don't feel bad about it.
Okay.
But I went into it very, I think, with a different mindset. Not like, oh, I want a professorship. I want, I want high impact paper, I was like, I want to learn some techniques. I want to become a better scientist, and that's my focus, to get the most out of this for my own personal development. I just see it as like, something kind of equivalent to a summertime fling. It's not going to last forever, so you just enjoy it, and then when it's over, it's over.
Wow. It's very different to what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
So, but I kind of like this attitude. It's
because I saw a lot of people suffer because, and I saw a lot of people suffer, and I see people suffering because they go into the postdoc thinking it's going to lead somewhere. And I think that can be quite disappointing when it doesn't. And what helped me come to this realization is I looked around me, and when I was at Max Planck, I was like, who from the postdocs that used to be in this lab still work here?
Zero.
Who of the postdocs in the other labs still work here? Okay, so it's not happened. Why should I be the exception? It's just like, it's a kind of harsh way to look at the...
No, I completely love that you bring it to such a point, because not everyone is like very straightforward in telling people like how they think and how they do it.
Yeah.
In my case, for instance, I have also like, we have 3 postdocs. No, 4. With me, 5. We all have not permanent contracts, of course.
Yeah.
But the way the lab works, so we have established metabolomics, for instance. My colleague just has till next year summer. And the way people are treated is not amazing. And the whole department is lacking actually postdocs. So we have more PhDs rather than postdocs. The problem is the PI gonna teach them the stuff or the postdocs? No?
And this is something that I think industry does really well, is when they have knowledge, to keep it in the company.
Yeah.
So they do really good offboarding, that they know, for example, like what the other person knows, and like make sure that this person is teaching the next generation of people before they go. And sometimes it's a little bit, I don't know, I think it's just short-sighted, right?
Yeah.
But that's just the system, and you see it all the time, that there's like equipment at the institute that no one knows how to use anymore, and then it falls out of order, and then even if you have someone that's motivated, the equipment is already like super old and so then it just becomes like a little dust collector.
Yeah, it's really like that. But then I see the other opposite side in industry, having the same instrument only in the shiny new version,
but no one using it.
5 times there. And of course, so for the people that they understand, so I'm right now in charge of one of the mass specs in our facility, and that one was neglected for like 2 years. No one really took care of it and so on. Now it's running because I'm taking care of it, and I really mastered this one. But the application specialist sometimes comes, and we have a good relationship. It's such a nice woman. And she is then actually telling me like, well, in, I don't know, XYZ company, we have of this 10 there. And I'm like, what they are doing? Yeah, they're all running it, and they have a lot of money, and now they're buying a new one. And I'm like, I wish I would have the money to buy the latest one. That is like 2 million euros. So it's kind of these two sides, right, that you have, and kind of interesting to know. And I see it like you do. If academia would do a better job in keeping the people and valuing what kind of knowledge the people bring, because in the end, if I leave, no one or only one person will be in charge in the end. But the problem is keeping up, maintaining. He has to keep, I think, 3 to 4 machines running. This will be the 5th machine. It's also for one person sometimes not feasible, right? So, and also when my colleague leaves, there's no one who can actually do the metabolomics. So it's just like a summer flicker, as you said.
Yeah.
The problem is my boss, of course, is then like, we need to do this and this. But there's no one anymore who can do it.
Yeah, well, somehow, the labs keep running, right? So I'm, they're not too concerned about what job I have afterwards. So I'm not too concerned about how they manage it afterwards. But, these are labs that have been here for, 10, decades, right? And they always find a way to staff them. So I think in some ways, they have their way of working that runs more or less. So I can also see why they don't change it. There's a lot of advantages to having, temporary workers. It's not as expensive.
Yeah.
But yeah, if this is going to continue and if this is going to, be a job where people get really high satisfaction, I don't know. I'm kind of excited to see how it develops and, how this system...
How it's crippling.
Yeah, because, it can't go on like this forever, right? It's also kind of weird, right? That, when you say you're doing a postdoc, people are kind of like, oh, okay, you're going to get worked to death for 3 years and then discarded. And, entering a job knowing that that's what's going to happen to you is also kind of concerning, right? That shouldn't be the norm.
Yeah.
And I think that maybe for the generation after us, I already see with the new generation of PhD students that they're not tolerating that. They are demanding better working conditions, and I think that they will bring a positive change to research.
I hope so. Yeah. Right now you have a bachelor student, I have a bachelor student, and we talk a lot about the conditions in academia, and she was very determined. She said, I want to do a PhD, but I'm very upfront. I don't know if I will stay in academia. So she wants to keep, she wants to have the experience of a PhD, but still she's really I want to know what is good for me, what I can do next. And I don't want to close doors and say I just gonna stay only in academia. So, and I really told her that's the best way to do, stay open and be what can I explore? And I'm doing kind of the same right now, specifically also with different collaborations that I want, because I think it's so boring to stay in one thing. And I forgot to tell you, I got the official letter that my funding got through.
Oh, that's lovely. I'm happy for you. That's exciting.
I was, yesterday it happened. So it was really funny because yesterday the administrator that we have, she came to me and be like, yeah, Chandni, you're going to get this email in August. And I was like, what are you talking about? And then she was like, yeah, didn't you receive this letter? I was like, no. And then I was like, what is it? Yeah, it's this Stiftungsantrag. I was like, it really got through? And she was like, yes, didn't you know that? I was like, no. And I was nearly crying.
Oh.
And it's a bit less than what I actually wanted. So 8,000 euros I got, but still it's a lot for me for the first time.
8,000?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I still can buy all the stuff because some things were expensive. And I was so happy. And, this is in a collaboration with a medical doctor, actually. And then I wrote him yesterday evening that I got it and we're going to start. And he was so excited. He was like, oh my God, that's so cool. He put his postdoc, which is also a medical doctor, into CC. And we're going to have soon, again, a meeting, like a Zoom meeting, to talk about like the next steps, what to do. And I'm so excited to see if the idea that I had for like 3 years, so I know this guy like 3 years ago, if this is really true, especially in the condition that he's looking at. And I'm really hoping to, establish this method and, kind of like figuring out how to improve it of course, but also trying to develop new methods or a similar method that are a bit better to understand the glycosylation in that sense. So, yeah, I was really happy. So, yeah. Before we do a recap of our first part, because we didn't touch the second part and we are like 1.5 hours in. But you see, like, the flow is really nice. So
is it? It's hard for me to tell. I can't. This is the first time I did this, so I have no idea if it's going good or bad.
I tell you, it's going very good.
Really?
Yes, because usually when you don't have anything to talk about, that's when silence happens. And then if you start off any question, then this is kind of the bad time. But we are having such a nice conversation. Like
it does feel like I'm talking to a friend. Like
right?
It feels
so that
casual.
should be it, right? Yeah. So that should be it. So I just want to go on the part because you're, can I say you're a trainer?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I work part-time as a trainer.
As a trainer, right?
Yeah.
So I would like to know, why did you start becoming a trainer? Of course, we know all now that you love nutrition and exercise, but why did you think you had to become like this part-time trainer? And what is your actually duty? And do you like doing it in future as well? So is it just like right now and then you just stop? Or
if my body will allow me to keep doing it, I would love to keep doing it. And this was an idea I had a really long time ago. Right before finishing my PhD, I was thinking, what would my ideal working life look like? And I really want to, live the things I research. And so I was like, I would like to also maybe like work as a yoga instructor. So I actually went out and did that. I got my yoga teacher training certificate after I had finished my PhD. But then I realized I didn't really like teaching yoga that much. And it was something I preferred to keep just for myself, because when I think about teaching and then I go to classes, I'm in teaching mode. How can I teach this better? Yeah. What is the Sanskrit name for this? And I'm just, thinking. And that's not the point. The point is to be there, be present. And so I just took that off of the table and I put a lot less pressure on myself. And I thought, you don't have to teach yoga. This should be something that, is nice for you and that you can share with people. And if you feel pressured or you feel like it's not genuine, then also your clients, clients are going to feel this.
Yes.
And shortly after that, I came to Munich and I started, just doing my normal routine of doing some sports. And there was one studio I really liked because the community seemed really nice and the trainers there also seemed really nice. And the head coach of that gym approached me and was kind of joking around and saying like, so when are you going to start working here? And I thought, oh my God, this guy is he serious? And then I was like, well, maybe he is. Maybe I would be a good trainer. And so I made an audition video. They asked you to audition.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I had to record a video for a couple of minutes. It's like a 2-minute video where you just explain your motivation and you have to tell them your favorite song to work out to.
Okay.
And then they called me back, and you have a little bit of training for how they want. Like, it's a company, right? So they have branding. You got to adhere by that. But oddly enough, I feel really different when I compare the feeling I had to teaching yoga. I still love doing the cycling classes. Yes. I go at least twice a week to do my own cycling with coaches who are now, I would say, friends. And so I like going to the classes of my friends, of the other coaches, and I still really like coaching my regular sessions. So for me, the feeling is really different.
Okay. I have to think about this. What would motivate me to be like a personal trainer or something like that?
At first I thought, I have no business telling anyone how to...
You have too much spare time.
I have no business telling anyone how to work out, right? But I don't think I'm telling people how to work out. I'm there to be supportive. Yeah. And to encourage people to
move their ass,
to move as quickly as they can in 40 minutes. And the level that I am coaching at is, how I would coach a friend, or how I would, that we are doing this workout together. I am feeling it is intense. You are feeling it's intense, but we are going to get through it together. And then this is kind of my approach to it. I'm not saying things like, okay, now I want your legs moving as fast as this, or I want, this is the ideal you need to be working at. No, we're here together for 40 minutes to get as much as we can out of this experience. And that is what I want. And that you feel good enough that you come back another time. But of course, I mean, the hard thing about the job is that sometimes you do get comments on your physical appearance. You do get comments on, things like, what business do you have telling me how to move, or how quickly I should be moving. But that's part of the workout, that we have to speed up in certain parts, or make the workout harder. And then that's a little bit frustrating, but I think that has also made me mentally a bit harder. I think that whenever I maybe joined the gym, I would say an orchid. Now I think I'm a bit more of a cactus. I have a little bit more, defense. And that translates into all aspects of my life, that I'm a bit tougher now, in that, I'm not taking things as personally, The people that are giving you feedback, I think it's really important, but, they're also not, you got to give feedback the weight it deserves. Just in science, you perform an experiment, and you got to give that experiment the consideration it deserves. If you see a lot of variability in your data, maybe you would give it different weight. And, if you give a good class, and 90% of the people say they really liked it, and then one person said they didn't, it's important not to take that so not so heavy. And then I was taking it pretty hard before. I was I want everyone to feel good, I want, but
I also learned it the hard way. So especially now with social media, everyone has their own opinion. And I'm also someone who's taking it really serious, oh my God, what can I do? Am I so bad at it? And, considering just leaving it again, not doing science communication anymore, because one person said, your English is so bad, or whatever, or you look ugly, or I don't know.
Sometimes I just, that to me is sometimes, people don't realize that it's an other human being on the other side.
Yeah.
And I think that someone would be really hesitant to come up to me and say something about me to my face. And whenever I'm writing things, you know, anonymously, I really think about like, hey, would I say this direct to someone's face? And if not, then I just, you know,
just don't write it.
You know, just don't write it, because that can really have an effect on people. And sometimes there's legitimate comments. Like, you know, sometimes people will say like, oh, I didn't like the balance of, you know, it was really hard to hear your voice on the mic. Or the music was louder than you're talking. It was hard for me to follow the instructions. You know, then I think, okay, yeah, I want to do it better. I want to do it better next time.
Yeah.
But when you say like, you know, something that is related to my appearance, that has nothing to do with my, you know, with my coaching. How does it matter, like, how I look, right? You know, it's dark anyways. You can't even see me.
Yeah. So,
so we're all in a dark room with flashing lights, and none of the flashing lights are on me. So why does it matter? How I
completely
how I look? You know.
So, or I don't know, the way you teach it or something like that is like, that's your style, right? You cannot change the style to the people. There are some people who will love it and some people who don't.
And this is when I think it comes all down to, you know, like routine. And, you know, I know the coaches that I like, and I know the ones that, like, you know, when I go there, I don't get as much out of the workout. So I just don't go to those coaches. But it's not because that person is a bad coach. It's just something that, you know, I don't really get as much out of the training. And you can see that we, like, you know, I think that's really unique about the gym is that we track progress. And so we can see your heart rate in real time. We can see the intensity at which you're working out. And yeah, if I'm, you know, not really feeling the coaching style, then I'm not getting as much out of it. So maybe next time I would go to a different coach. And some people love this coach, and, you know, the sessions are fully booked as soon as they open. And that's that. You know, you can't make...
Yeah, but it works for these people, right? But not particularly for you. So it's completely okay if... No? As long as you don't go to these people and be like, you're doing a bullshit job or something like that, you know, then that's completely fine, right? But since the internet is so nice and anonymous, you can do whatever you want. And I see that very often, so...
but I think that's, you know, that's slowly changing. So recently, as part of the workout app, you know, the comments always used to be anonymous, but now people are not, like, you know, I can see the actual participant if they wish to reveal their identity. They can, and I think it's a good thing that, you know, people are a little bit more accountable for the things that they write. So whenever I'm more likely to read feedback when someone is saying who they are, because I do believe it is a bit more genuine, because, you know, I could approach them and ask them about it, right? Yeah. Not that I would ever. I also think that, you know, if someone were to write something that wasn't necessarily constructive, I would not necessarily engage with them. If it's something like, you know, they have a legitimate question, then yes. But if it's just, you know, unrelated, no way.
Okay. The last thing before we wrap up is, you said you do science communication.
Oh, do I?
I don't know. You said something in that direction, so I just wanted to ask you, like.
So I would love to work. One career that I was exploring was working, for example, for, like, as, you know, in a journal. And I really love reading manuscripts and, you know, helping to make them better and ideas more clear. Actually, this was one of my favorite jobs whenever I was a student. You know, I was working at the language center of the Technical University of Munich, and at the English Writing Center. And then we would have students come in and they just had their text with them, and then they needed a bit of help reworking them. And I loved that job. I thought something similar would be nice. But in terms of if I would ever go to Pint of Science or communicate science in that way, I think this is already like so many steps further than I would normally feel comfortable than I would normally feel comfortable with.
No, I was thinking like you would make a really good science communicator, especially in that particular field you're working in. But you're really good in teaching and explaining things. So I was just wondering, like, if you already considered it, or like going out public, doing videos.
No, I really wouldn't. But I don't know, maybe there will be like an experience that's going to change my mind. But for now, I would say I'm pretty close to it, just because of the nature of how sensitive food and weight loss is. That for me, I find it hard to do it in a good way. So yeah, I don't really feel like competent enough to
But
to do
that's
it.
interesting that people don't feel competent enough, even though you work in this field, you have read a lot about it. And then there are, of course, the overshouters that are talking shit and don't know anything.
But
So
it's the vastness of it. I mean, like, even thinking about like microbiome and obesity, to be able to talk on that topic properly would take me, at least a couple of weeks of preparation to do it properly.
Yeah.
And realistically, with the scientific career I have now, on top of the other things, like my other commitments, it is really challenging to keep up with the scientific literature. And there's constantly new developments. So even if you think about your own field and the new information that is published, it can be a little bit daunting to keep up with it.
Yeah.
I think for me, whenever like navigating this landscape, because of the field I'm in, a lot of people will ask questions like, "Oh, glucose goddess," or "Do you know glucose goddess?" Yes. And this apple.
I have my own opinion on her, but okay.
But by your expression, what's your feeling about her work? I actually think she's doing like an all right job. She made it really like she makes really engaging content.
Maybe I'm a bit too spoiled by Dr. Lane Norton, but she opens up a biochemistry book, reads one page, and then tells people like the glucose spike is not okay.
Yeah.
I'm like, why? Why are you doing this? Why you're not explaining the physiology behind it? And for me, and that's why just shortly about Andrew Huberman, for me, scientific integrity and staying to the data that we have and being honest about it is something that I'm really, really I'm practicing that. So if someone talks shit or misinterprets something, that for me is the biggest thing ever that should not happen. Of course, now I'm also open here. I try to read the paper that we're gonna have now, and I did not fully read it, right? But I read about other papers and so on, and I try to keep up to date. But if someone starts misinterpreting, or in Andrew Huberman's, what the allegations are, that he actually takes rodent studies and sells it as human studies, which is completely what you should not do. That for me is kind of a no-go. So, because people think that we scientists figure out everything, which is not true. Still, we don't understand everything. And if you stand there and be like, I know everything and I can tell you exactly what's going on, no. because biology is so complex and so difficult. There's so many variables. You cannot take one aspect out and be like, that's it. That's the magic behind it, and I figured it out. Like, it's not working like that.
I think it becomes a little bit tricky because I do think that, you can know a lot about a topic and keep on top of the scientific literature and not necessarily have doctor in front of your name.
No.
But I don't know. I feel a little bit more open to, for example, if someone's not a professor or doesn't have a PhD, but they are presenting information in a reasonable way.
Yeah.
I think it's
It's
fine.
valid. It's fine.
And I think it's valid. I don't know what her academic background is, but I don't think she has a scientific background. But anyways,
she did a bachelor's in I think biochemistry, as far as I know.
Yes, yeah.
That's it. Like, she doesn't have like master or anything. She is working in, as far as I know, in a company now. She is her own boss and blah blah blah. For me, I'm always about explaining the people how the mechanism works. And as you said...
But the thing is, like, sometimes, it's not known how the mechanism works. So, for example...
But then tell the people.
Yes. Yes.
Like, don't make it up that you are the one who found out how the mechanism works. Like...
And this is where, I think, I heard about this apple cider vinegar thing from a friend of a friend. And, surprisingly, my dad is actually quite, for a, 70-year-old man that doesn't have social media, he actually knew about the glucose goddess first.
What?
And then brought it up to me. And then I was just like, yeah, Dad, whatever. And then another scientist brought it up.
Okay.
And then she asked me about, glucose goddess. And I was like, okay, you're the second person to bring this up. So, because
let's have a look.
Yeah, let's have a look, because, it seems like this is becoming like quite a point of discussion. And then, so I looked at her Instagram, and she was, promoting apple cider vinegar or drinking apple cider vinegar. And, this was something that my mom was actually doing, when I was a little kid, and also drinking apple cider vinegar. So I was like, maybe this is in trend. But I was like, okay, come on, what's the science behind it? Yeah. And does it actually work? And there's a couple of mechanisms, behind this that, first of all, it increases the acidity of your mouth. So this makes the alpha amylase in your mouth that is like already starting to break down sugars, it makes it inactive because it's changing the pH in your mouth. Okay. It also enhances glucose. Uptake by a not clearly defined mechanism. I think what's a little bit problematic is that a lot of the things she's suggesting, if you didn't train in nutrition, you might think that these were her concepts. But these are ideas that have been around for a very, very long time. She also suggests, whenever you consume something with a lot of carbohydrate, that you pair that with a protein, or that you pair that with a fat, and this slows down the glucose spike. You don't have such a big flood of glucose into your body. But these are all things that, you can learn in a nutrition course. And then I think it's, I think she is smart to capitalize on these ideas, and how she shows and communicates the science, I think, is very engaging. But it's not really a novel. It's not really a novel
but she's
idea.
selling it like she kind of, I don't know, tricked us all and knows exactly how things work. And the problem is also, like, if you start using science to promote your own supplements and whatever, and
And now she has this supplement, which I guess is just dried apple cider vinegar.
I don't know. It should lower the glucose spike after meal or something like that. And
but I looked into it because I had questions from colleagues and also acquaintance, and then if you look at the data and you look at like what the effect size is, it definitely can reduce overall your blood glucose excursion. So you're not like, you don't have as much blood sugar over, 2 hours, which is the typical tracing of blood glucose in your system. But it's like, a 10% change, right? And when you look at her Instagram page, you might think like, oh, this is the holy grail. Like this is something that like I definitely now have to start, drinking a lot of apple cider vinegar. It's not the case. And there is a benefit, but it is a small benefit, and I think this is where like a style of eating is very important, that you're eating things that have benefits and this adds up, right? Yeah. But if you're going to McDonald's and then you're just having, a shot of apple cider vinegar beforehand, in the long run, that style of eating and the pattern of eating is just, not healthy.
Yeah. So, I completely agree.
But it does help. But consider, please, the effect, like the degree of the effect that it has.
Yeah. She has been introduced to many other podcasts. She was at Jay Shetty, CEO of Diary and whatever. And for me, I don't know, maybe I'm too critical in that sense. If I see that, and Dr. Lane Norton really made a point that she is somehow making up stuff that is not really a big thing. If you start getting all these people on these big podcasts and give them the platform to actually contribute to the kind of BS that you're doing, that is somehow negatively affecting the science behind it, I would say. Maybe I'm wrong. But that's why I'm so critical. And that's why, I tried with the podcast also to give the people the opportunity to have a podcast where they know, okay, it's a scientist who knows their field. And I'm also very critical because I also read the stuff in there, and I'm not gonna, if you do a statement, then I would say, hey, I would look it up and be sure that the statement that you made is okay.
Yeah.
And nowadays, not many people are doing that anymore. They just believe what the expert is saying and then not critically assessing it. And then, of course, all this kind of misinformation is spread and spread and spread. And this is something that, for me as a scientist, the integrity of science is then damaged, my opinion. So I don't know. Am I too critical or?
No, I don't think that you're too critical. There's definitely a problem with a lot of sensationalism. And, we already, like, I won't give it more press than it deserves, but, I do think that sometimes effects are really exaggerated, and that's where I think, a lot of critical thinking comes into play.
Yeah.
And that when you hear such a thing, that you should look into it a little bit more, right?
Yeah. Definitely.
And if you think about how, pervasive a condition is. So for example, overweight, obesity, there are, a lot of people that are living with this condition, 30%.
Yeah.
And if there were a cure, like, just drinking acetic acid, 30 ml of acetic acid, we wouldn't have a lot of people researching this topic, right? Because there would be such a simple cure for it.
Solution,
It is a really complex problem, and that's why for now there's not really like a really good solution.
Yeah.
So, but I think that it's also that this information is just really accessible, right? And it's sometimes feeding into the narrative that people want to want to hear. So keep thinking critically, keep thinking about what you read and the numbers that are behind that. Recently, I was in, the grocery store, and I saw a headline that said, taking Viagra can protect you against developing Alzheimer's disease. And then and then I was like, I'm curious. I mean, can it like help protect someone against Alzheimer's disease? And I think it reduces the risk of developing Alzheimer's by like 5%, which I guess is, you could think of it as pretty good, right? 5% is better than nothing.
Yeah.
But all of the maybe side effects you get from, taking Viagra.
Yeah.
And I also was thinking, how long do you have to take Viagra? And,
But
how does this really work as a treatment?
Yes, yeah. What is the mechanism behind it that people come to that conclusion?
Yeah,
because I
think it's from retrospective studies where you're able to look at you're able to compare patients that have Alzheimer's and patients that have Alzheimer's but happen to also take Viagra. And
how do you assess that? Well, do you ask the people like...
you have medical records, right? And this is why I think the UK Biobank is, really, really important, because it's gathering a lot of information so you can do these correlation studies. And then this is how how we come to find new treatments.
Yes.
But I think it's important, like this is the first step, finding links, but not to exaggerate it, because then like people start to mistrust science. But I think in general, science should be mistrusted. I mean, I think that like, it's the pursuit of knowledge and truth, and truth is absolute certainty. So everything that is not truth and absolute certainty should always be questioned. There can be really strong evidence for it, but like we are in the business of questioning the truth.
To that, I have a question for you. So it's been a while. So I was reading about intermittent fasting and then autophagy. So I wanted to ask you, like, I saw that there are studies out there linking both, and they were like, so everyone that says intermittent fasting is the only way to reduce your weight is by upregulating autophagy, because that is the recycling bin. And that, first of all, autophagy happens all the time in the cell, right? It's not like a switch on and off by your diet. It's just always on. So I wanted to ask you, do you know why this link is there? Like, did people just look at autophagy for some reason in intermittent fasting as a degradation pathway? Or did they also look into other degradation pathways and didn't find any significant difference? Or
I think the idea behind it is that this is, whenever you're fasting, this is a stressor on the body. And then this stressor is triggering this pathway, and that it's helping to like clear out waste products. But I don't know like if there's really convincing and strong evidence for a role for like autophagy playing a really key role in the prevention of obesity. At least until now, I haven't seen a super convincing studies. And I think this is also like leading into the microbiome studies. The microbiome, you can study it in any disease condition and it's going to be affected because it's a living organism and it's affected by its inputs. And I think there's also like a lot of limitations when you're looking at the microbiome. The first one is that you just know the relative abundance. So you don't know the exact concentration or the exact amount of a bacteria that you need. You only know it in relation to what you can measure.
What you can measure.
What you can measure.
Yeah.
So
What is right now possible?
What is right now technically possible
yeah.
to measure. And then this is why we see such a big gap between rodent studies. So for how I first got in touch with the microbiome, I never had thought about it before until I joined, this master's program. And, there's one professor there who does a lot of research on the microbiome, and he was a really big proponent of it. He studies it more in the context of irritable bowel disease. But of course, he gave some background information on obesity. And where this observation comes from is that when you pair house rodents, there is one that's lean and one that's obese. And when you put them together, the lean one will start to become obese. And the fun fact about rodents is that they're corpophages. So that means that they can get energy from their feces. So they actually will eat their feces.
Yeah. Okay.
And humans don't do that. We are very efficient at getting energy.
Just imagine right now what's happening.
Humans don't do that because they're very efficient at getting energy from their food, whereas rodents are not. There's a lot of leftover energy still in their poop, so they tend to eat poop. And then this is how the field of fecal microbial transfer started. And how people got the idea to start transferring feces, because rodents naturally do it. And then this is how this field took off, and how FMT started off as like a
super interesting
as a treatment.
Okay.
And so there were these studies where they were, where they pair lean and obese, and then the lean mouse develops obesity. And then if you give just the microbiome by FMT to a lean mouse, then it will also develop
that's
obesity.
Okay.
Yeah, and it is quite an interesting observation, and it really makes you think about your daily life, right? And there's a lot of accidental fecal microbial transfer, in daily life. So you might also want to consider how the microbiome of your close intimate partners are maybe affecting
you never know,
affecting you, right? How the other person's microbiome is influencing you. And so with studying the microbiome, what they observed is that there's the production of short chain fatty acids, and the gut is quite a complicated place, more complicated than I think most people would imagine. There's different cell types. It is a proper endocrine organ, and proteins that are either secreted from the microbiome or that are also on the cell on the bacterial surface, can also interact with cells of the intestine. Of the host. And some of these are short chain fatty acids, which can then interact with the GLP-1 receptor, and this is the mechanism by which obesity is implicated in the microbiome. And I think it's also quite interesting that directly providing short chain fatty acids doesn't seem to have any benefit in human studies, but really providing the bacteria itself and providing proper nutrition to the bacteria in the gut seems to have more benefit rather than just providing the short chain fatty acids itself. And then these fibers are found in fruits and vegetables, and that is sometimes not as fancy sounding as short chain fatty acids.
Just take this pill. That will break everything for you, right? Or I don't know. some other stuff that some supplement companies come up with, and actually you just need to add a bit more fiber to your diet.
Yeah, some more fiber to your diet. And I think this is where we come back to like the limitations of what we're able to measure. We're able to measure and able to detect differences in short chain fatty acids, but not just supplementing those doesn't seem to be enough. So there must be, something else that is there that is secreted, or something within the process, an intermediate that we cannot yet detect, that is really
or
important.
maybe some metabolic pathways that we still didn't uncover now, right? So maybe enzymes that we didn't know play a role suddenly do some intermediates that promote something else. So it's really, really interesting to look at it.
So I do think autophagy, I'm like, unfortunately, I can't speak so much about because I'm not so into the
No,
autophagy
I just was
field.
wondering.
But I might be getting into it soon because we are starting some spermidine research in our lab, which is an activator of autophagy.
Okay.
So we're like,
Stay tuned for Margherita coming to the podcast back, telling you guys
about spermidine and autophagy.
Yeah, and how it's linked with intermittent fasting. Yeah. Okay.
But microbiome, I think, definitely has some relevance, and the main takeaways for me is that the field is still growing, but that it is important to feed your gut, and fiber, including more fiber in your diet, is definitely has some benefit. But you have to also consider what the global effect is. And I think in general, whenever you're eating in a healthy way, in a sustainable, in a way that you can maintain, that you get a lot more, benefits. Additive effects.
Yeah. Okay, so we do a little recap of 2 hours.
Oh my goodness, I can't believe it's been 2 hours.
2 hours. But that's good. So thanks a lot, Margherita, for that kind of insights that you give us on the first round here. And so we learned how you started your science career, and why nutrition and exercise science is so important for you. And we were already talking a lot about what we want to do in the second part now. And so how important also it's to talk about communicating the importance of nutritional science. Now I want to go a bit deeper on the topic that we prepared. And it's about diabetes and the emerging role of gut microbiome in the disease progression and development. And guys, for you, we are going to cover that in this topic in part 2. So stay tuned for part 2 and let me know what you think in the meantime. Do you think that microbiome and the gut itself have an influence on your health, and actually in the disease development of diabetes and obesity? And let me know in the comments, and we see us in the part 2. And guys, as always, let a little dose of honest science in your life and brighten up your day.
Daily dose of honest science.